On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a consultant in life sciences. And I help companies really focus in on their people, process, and technology, primarily around, that process portion of any sort of business in our sector. And so with that, let me just bring in our guest for today. In this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Tom Hartman. Tom is the president and CEO of the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, ISPE. Tom leads a global network of 20,000 professionals spanning the complete pharmaceutical life cycle. So with that, welcome, Tom.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome, and it's great. It's great to get to interview somebody as well that is in an organization that has the sort of reach that ISPE has in our sector as well. So, would you mind just taking a little bit of time and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, fantastic. Again, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. It's been a fast start to the year, and ISPE is preparing for multiple conferences that'll take place both in the United States and Europe. In the way of my background, I've been in this role as president and CEO, a wonderful role actually, president and CEO of ISPE for nearly 4 years. Prior to that, I spent some 20 plus years in GSK's biotech operations, with my last role being vice president of GMP operations. Prior to that, I joined GSK in about the year 2000, roughly. But prior to that, I held multiple roles in the chemical industry. I retired in March of 2020 from GSK on the cusp of the pandemic. And we were talking earlier, my retirement plans really unraveled because, if you'll recall, March of 2020 was really when the pandemic hit. And so all of my plans kind of went by the wayside. But the role as CEO of ISPE opened up around that time. And I felt like, given the circumstances in the world, I needed to continue to play some role in the industry, particularly given the circumstances with the pandemic. And I wanted to continue to support global patient populations and really try to participate in shaping the future of the pharmaceutical industry. And that's really what ISPE is all about. I expressed my interest in the role and was ultimately awarded the role. It's been a fantastic experience. In the way of my education, I'm an engineer by training with an MBA, and I have experienced a wonderful career in both the chemical industry and the pharma industry. I've done business across the globe that I think really prepared me well for my current role as CEO of the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering. ISP is really making a difference in many areas in the industry, but in partnership with our board of directors and with a fabulous staff that I have, we believe that ISPE is truly uniquely positioned to shape the future of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, and I feel like organizations like ISPE, go through these different evolutions as well, where there's focus obviously on the industry and sort of where the industry is. And I kind of look at where ISPE is in terms of the overall impact and just in terms of your career and what led you to this point in terms of joining ISPE. What was it that really kind of brought you to this point in terms of pivotal moments in your career that help you now, with your role inside of ISPE?
That's fantastic that you're asking that. Moving from the commodity chemicals business to the pharmaceutical industry was likely the largest pivot in my career. Product margins in the chemical industry are very tight, and that caused everyone to be mindful of expenses to a point that drove innovation and putting systems in place to make the operations very efficient. Joining the pharmaceutical industry in 2001, there was tremendous focus. There was tremendous focus, rightfully so, on developing differentiated biotech medicines. But I felt that I brought the commodity chemical mindset to reducing the cost of goods and introducing operational efficiencies. And I was rewarded with progression to the role of Vice President of GMP operations with responsibilities for not only manufacturing, but engineering, IT, quality control, and aspects of the manufacturing supply chain. I had the opportunity to participate at GSK, which is, by the way, a great company. I was able to participate in the licensure of several biotech products. Some may be aware of them. Nucala was one of them. That's a respiratory indication. Benlysta for lupus is another. And even the cell and gene therapy product, Stremvelis for ADA SCID. If you're old enough to remember the boy in the bubble, that was ADA SCID.
Huh.
Which is curable now, and a myriad of other biotech molecules progressing in the clinic. I think these experiences and these pivots really prepared me well for my current role, and were truly pivotal in forming my view of the industry and what a noble profession it really is to work in this pharmaceutical industry. Working with teams on these molecules gave me significant insights into bringing molecules to market and all that goes into it, and the associated costs to do that. So, in my career journey, I've witnessed a great deal of personal sacrifice made by scientists, engineers, regulators, service providers, and really, if you think about it, all the technical disciplines needed to bring a medicine to market. And all of these disciplines, I'm happy to say, make up our membership of ISPE. So it's great to bump into people that I used to work with, and also those that are involved in similar activities throughout bringing transformational medicines to patients.
Yeah, to me, there's got to be a level inside of the role that you have that's both, you have to have a strong network and understanding in terms of what's going on in the industry, as well as that balance of, just sort of the network and the people, as well, that touch the different areas of the industry as well. I would imagine both are equally important, in terms of the overall, progress of your current role inside of ISPE.
Absolutely. And in that regard, there's been a lot that's influenced and uplifted my career. My passion for my current role was really seeded by the pandemic itself. Vaccines were developed, they were scaled and made available to patients across the globe and on multiple manufacturing platforms. But really, when you think about it, Don, they were all done in record time.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face the music here, more than 8 million people died in the pandemic. Okay. And a big link in the vaccine availability chain was putting manufacturing facilities in place that could reliably deliver a quality vaccine that's efficacious and safe and that would satisfy worldwide demand. And it all happened due to heroics demonstrated by pharmaceutical industry workers in partnership with international regulators. That to me is really big news, but it really gets little attention. And I'm not sure how much you're aware of it or not, but ISPE has a very vibrant Facilities of the Year Award program. And really what it does is it recognizes the people that put these facilities in place, but yet get little recognition. And we're doing what we can at ISPE to change this. We're trying to elevate this. The news you see today, and I'm not saying it's not important news, but the latest news in the world today is about a plug door blowing out on a Boeing 737.
Right. Or the election, or any number of scandals. Yes, right.
And frankly, it's dominated the news for several days now. And while I understand and appreciate, and I fly a lot, the importance of this to the traveling public, the impact on humankind from this event pales in comparison to the millions of people that were lost during the pandemic. And more importantly, those that avoided death because vaccines and other treatments were available in record time and really against all the odds. This, in my view, should be the big news.
Hmm.
And it should be highlighted and highlight the heroics in the industry. And this is what ISPE's Facility of the Year program is all about. We recognize the best of the best facilities from an innovation perspective, an operability perspective, supply chain robustness, digitization, and even social impact. Now, each year at our annual conference, we have a Facility of the Year Awards banquet, and that has gone from 150 attendees pre-pandemic to well over 450 at our latest banquet. Uh, Again, we recognize the best of the best in each of the categories, as well as award the overall winner, and it's a big event for us.
I just pulled it up on my side, so it looks to me like like it goes by the acronym of FOIA. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, Facility of the Year Award. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I was trying to see because so to be fair, right? Whenever I go to manufacturing facilities, I've walked past these awards before and not paid attention, but now I have a reason to also just pay attention to both the awards as well as the recipients. So thank you for
Yeah, that'd be
for the highlight.
they're very coveted by those that win them. You'll find them displayed in the CEO's office or whatever the case may be. And it's an important award to get. There's a lot that goes into it. The judging panel is a set of international experts. I don't get involved in it at all, except to make a speech before the meeting about how important it is. But yeah, it's a great event.
Great. And then can you elaborate a little bit on how ISP under your leadership is contributing to the advancement of the biopharma industry?
Sure. Um, and I noticed that you talk about the biopharm industry, but ISP is really centered around both large molecules, biotech molecules, small molecules, and cell and gene therapies. So the ISP's advancement of the industry in general is underpinned by multiple platforms that together advance and shape the future of our industry. And you might say, well, what are these? And well, we hold 6 international conferences within Europe and the United States each year. These are multi-day conferences. It's not one and done, that are aimed at the most relevant topics in our industry. We have a Facilities of the Future conference later this month in San Francisco. We have an aseptic conference in March in Vienna. The EU annual conference, the European annual conference, is in April in Lisbon. We have a biotech conference, an international biotech conference will take place in Boston in June. And our annual meeting and expo takes place in Orlando in October, and we'll round out December in Rome for our Pharma 4.0 Annex 1 and Digitization Conference. These conferences not only advance the conversations to solutions, but also show the latest product developments and services available to our membership that visit our exhibit halls. Another way we do this is ISPE's guidance document library is a critical component to our ability to connect pharmaceutical knowledge. Whether we're talking about water systems in biotech large molecule facilities, or how to contain potent compounds for small molecules, or the other 60 documents in our book of knowledge, our ISPE library is a critical component forming the cornerstone of our demonstrated expertise. We have hands-on training programs or classroom programs on basic GMPs or even advanced quality systems. We also have custom training if needed, where companies come to us and ask us to put a particular training program together specifically for their needs. and they can rely on ISPE being relevant in that space. So, and our International Regulatory Steering Council is top notch, with very senior industry members that advance regulatory initiatives. And we comment on a regular basis on emerging regulatory requirements or white papers that regulators would like ISPE's thought leadership on. We have 19 technical communities of practice, and we're expanding that to 22 with the addition of several more, including sustainability, artificial intelligence, and pharmaceutical compounding. You know, these COPs, communities of practice, technical communities of practice, underpin ISPE's knowledge network. I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Robert Califf Dr. Califf at the FDA, and I asked him what role he thought ISPE could play significantly in the AI conversation. And he said it would be very helpful if you could begin to define the guide rails. What
Mm.
are the guide rails for the use of artificial intelligence? And I thought that was really something that we took up. And on the heels of that conversation, we went and started our own artificial intelligence COP. That will be up and in place by the end of the first quarter of this year, actually. But beyond that, there is evidence of our relevancy in the industry, and it's born in the growth of our membership. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we've moved the needle of membership from 17,000 members pre-pandemic to more than 22,000 members, some say 30% increase. And I would invite people to go to ispe.org to visit our website and learn more about ISPE and how it can make a difference for you.
Yeah, I think it's so important for the new and expanding areas to have this ability to have a collective. And one of the things that I frequently see, and that I mean, I'm not a scientist, right? Yeah, I'm a PhD, but more on the IT realm, and kind of focused overall on organizational, the organizational structure and things like that is the background of my PhD. So I tell people frequently that, even though I'm in life sciences, I feel honored to be here. But at the same time, the key question I always have is, how do you sort of foster collaboration in an area where, to be honest, I feel like a lot of organizations are so limited. I mean, you come from, a large pharmaceutical organization yourself, and so you had to feel this before, where you could share certain things, but there's a certain wall that has to be put up in terms of protecting IP and things like that. I really think that organizations like ISPE, have to play a fundamental role in that, in addition to these other, these expanding, areas of practice as well.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation, because if you think about 22,000 members, how do they stay connected? How do they engage? How do we engage them? What are the conversations going to be? I guess I would answer it by saying that there's multiple avenues of connecting pharmaceutical knowledge across ISPE. Our structure includes 40 affiliates across the globe, and they're present in 120 countries. All are connected globally through our technical communities of practice. And anyone in the network, and I mean anyone in the network, from wherever you are, can ask a question that'll be answered by the COP network. It might take a day to get the answer. You might get 4 answers from different parts of the world, because they might be operating locally with their local regulations. But there's a lot of conversation that occurs, and the subject matter experts that we have in these technical communities of practice are really good at what they do. They're
Mm.
really subject matter experts. It's a fantastic platform. Further, as I mentioned, we have these conferences each year, and our affiliates have local conferences and local events. These conferences, there's significant networking that occurs, and the conference topics reflect those that are most meaningful in our industry. We have to be relevant. Okay, the real issues that are happening in the industries are discussed, the challenges are discussed, case studies are discussed, and solutions are brought forward in our education sessions. It's not good enough to just say we've got this problem. We need case studies on how they were solved. This is an important component of what we do, because we believe we're uniquely positioned to solve industry's most complex challenges. And I think this is really the cornerstone of what we're all about. We also have exhibit halls, and a lot of people think, oh, the reason you have the exhibit hall is to support the financials of the conference. Some of that is true, but frankly, our exhibit halls, and I refer to them as innovation hubs, offer the latest innovative products and services to our attendees. Whether you're a pharmacist looking to meet regulatory expectations on compounding, or a microbiologist wanting to learn more about effective environmental monitoring programs, a QC analyst perhaps wanting to understand how to treat an out of trend QC result, or even understand what a robust out of specification procedure should contain, or even an engineer, for example, trying to develop protocols for a subsequent validation activity. It's all there. You'll find these at our conferences, you'll find these in these networks and these communities of practice. And I think this is what differentiates ISPE, the deep subject matter expertise, the variety and depth and breadth of our service offerings, I think are simply outstanding.
And if you were to take a look at some of your current projects or initiatives at ISPE, what are you particularly excited about? Is it your new areas of practice, or are there other elements that you're independently excited about?
Yeah, and I did previously speak about the Facility of the Year Award program. I spoke to that earlier. I think it's a great program. It really excites me. I'll tell you, you don't go to that event and not shed a tear, because these people are bearing their soul about why they went in record time to build these facilities for family members that have the very disease, for example, that they're building the facility to manufacture a product to address. I mean, it really is uplifting. That excites me. Another thing that excites me is our Workforce of the Future initiative. ISPE is fostering an environment whereby students and recent graduates can attend ISPE conferences to learn about the industry, and even to engender their participation in the industry. There's really a gap out there in the number of capable workers available in our industry versus the anticipated demand. I'll give you an example. I was talking with Novo Nordisk the other day. Ozempic is flying off the shelf. They can't manufacture enough of it. They're going to be hiring upwards of 40,000 people over the next 3 or 4 years. That's a lot of people. Where are they going to get this talent? So there's a gap in the number of capable workers available in the industry versus the anticipated demand. Also, historically, our industry has not attracted the level of diversity that we would call representative of the diversity of the population in the United States or even abroad. So we have a program spearheaded by our ISPE Foundation that provides financial assistance to students and emerging leaders across the globe that would otherwise not be able to afford to come to a conference and learn about our industry. An example of this is how does a student from Nigeria learn about manufacturing transformational medicines? Where does he begin?
Mm.
The foundation seeks to elevate the knowledge base across the globe and ensure that all the countries, through knowledge without borders, are able to advance pharmaceutical sciences locally and be less dependent on Western-based pharmaceutical industry to provide them with their needs. I think that's really a noble effort. It really excites me. But really, in the regulatory space, there's quite a bit of what we have. We have a regulatory harmonization initiative, Don, and I don't know how much of this you're plugged into, but regulatory convergence will be key to the industry's future as patient populations and their governments, frankly, demand more of our industry. Having an environment of convergence is key.
Mm.
And we at ISP have many topics in our conferences in this area of concern. We just initiated a study called Barriers to the Introduction of Innovation, whether this be new manufacturing equipment, whether it be a post marketing change of some kind that involves innovation, whether it's a novel technology. Ideally, the industry should have one way for industry to introduce innovation. And at the moment, many regulatory bodies have their specific methodologies regarding how this is done. That slows everybody down. It adds cost to the programs. and so on and so forth. And our studies indicate a great deal of positive feedback on the FDA's innovation program. But the industry needs all regulatory agencies to mind melt on one way of introducing new technologies. Um, we'll be issuing the results of this particular effort in a white paper by the end of the first quarter. I'm really, really excited about our drug shortages program that also happens in our regulatory space. This is the year 2024, Don, and we will have hundreds of drugs go short this year. There is an issue that industry and regulators must address. This is not an optional thing, in my view. It's a moral issue. We must address it, and we must be far more thoughtful about how that gets addressed than we have been in the past. You can find ISPE Drug Shortages Prevention Guide on our website. If you want to learn more, we could go in and talk 2 hours about that. But there's many factors, including financial, that result in drug shortages. And the industry must address this problem. It's really at the forefront of what we're trying to do in the regulatory space. The other thing that excites me is our professional development team has been busy trying to meet all the requests for custom training that we're getting. This is a program whereby corporations come to ISP and ask us to put together a specific program for their company. This is a program that has continued to develop along with our professional development and training courses that are also available to the industry. These are just a few core activities that excite me, and we work hard to link these activities together with the 40. If you can imagine trying to link all of that with our 40 chapters and affiliates across the globe and keep everybody on the same page with what we're trying to accomplish and how they can help. It's really a big effort. It's a one ISPE effort and concept that we again believe is going to shape the future of the pharmaceutical industry.
In terms of looking ahead, what are some of your strategic goals for ISPE, especially whenever you look at the rapidly evolving industry that we have?
Yeah, that's a great question. You have to first take a step back and say to yourself, what's happening in the industry, and then how do we respond to it? And the growth in the industry is driven significantly by the pandemic, and 4 of the 5 leading pharmaceutical products are biotech products and biologics. And even if you remove the top 2 pandemic-related medicines, you still have what I refer to as a fast-moving growth in the biotech sector across the globe. That's going to continue. However, while biotech continues to dominate the R&D space, and yeah, it represents probably 40% of the overall revenue generated, small molecules and over-the-counter products combined will lead the revenue generation for the industry, will continue to lead. And so while the investment picture has shifted some time ago to biologics, the industry will continue to rely on small molecules and over-the-counter revenues for the foreseeable future. So there are many reasons why biologics are dominating the R&D investment landscape. They have a very a good safety profile compared to small molecules in general. They rarely fall down in late phase clinical studies. And innovator companies that are inventing these biotech molecules realize that biologics provide a softer financial landing from a patent perspective.
Mm.
But the industry data does suggest that there's an increasing number of small molecules with patents expiring over the next few years. This will likely translate into a rise in small molecule generic manufacturing. So when we talk about our role in ISPE, we have to continue to focus, given what I just said, on both large and small molecules, and even move into cell and gene therapies more thoughtfully. And look for opportunities to reduce the cost of goods so that these medicines are more available across the globe. How do we accelerate in each of those modalities, speed to market, and the opportunities to reduce the cost of goods? I think is front and foremost. And how do we improve quality and enhance operational efficiencies? This will be reflected in our conference content, our guidance documents, our training, and regulatory perspectives that respond to and shape the future of the industry.
Such an important thing to focus on, especially kind of through the life cycle of drugs, right? And knowing the support of having an organization like ISPE, there to help teams, just think about that collaboration, but also, the additional components that you're adding in, like you said, in terms of, the documents that you provide, as well as the training that the organization provides is also critically important.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the next round of the interview, I want to try and focus a little bit more on you overall. So what's the greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever received?
It's interesting that in your career you don't really think about these things until you get more senior in your career, and you try to look back and say, what made a difference for me? Um, and let's face it, we are all the consequence or the result of who we are, who we've met, who we've interacted with, what we've done, and so on and so forth. But what I've learned over the years from a leadership perspective is results count. However, you can't be complacent. And I had some really good advice from somebody I worked for some time ago who said, Tom, what you have to do is seek perfection, but deliver excellence, because you'll never be perfect. Okay. And I also think the quality of whatever you're doing, whether it's developing a guidance document, whether it's releasing a drug, whatever the case may be, that the quality of what you do always trumps the speed at which it should be
Mm.
done. Take the time to do it right first time. But there's also something to be said about decision making. Don't assume anything. Make decisions based on facts and data, but make very, very smart decisions. Businesses succeed on smart decisions that deliver results. Being lucky is not a sustainable business model. You might make a really bad decision and it might go really well, but try to use that as your long-term sustainable business model. You will fail.
Mm.
The other thing is, I've always thought that, always try to do the right thing. Whether you have decisions in our personal or even professional lives, you'll be best served doing what is right versus popular or what is politically correct at that moment in time. Be true to yourself and those that you lead, and have courage to take the necessary actions when you have to. You have to have the courage to do that and act. Um, I think these kinds of things have enabled me to lead ISPE in partnership with, I have a fantastic board of directors. And I believe the results that we've had in ISPE with the growth that we've seen really speaks for itself. And I think these values have served me well.
Yeah, and I think as I think about a lot of the things that you said, I feel like looking back, it's always easier to kind of pick these elements apart. But at the same time, there's so much in what you just said in terms of, making sure that you execute, but you take the time, overall to do it right is important, and making sure that whatever you do, that it's true to who you are, that it's not, something aside from that. And then also, I really think, and it's one of the reasons why this podcast exists in the first place, is that I feel like we are all better together. It's one of
Yeah,
those, central core beliefs that I have, along with, lifelong learning and several other things that kind of, sort of guide me on a day-to-day basis. But I sort of look at this idea of, we're only better the more that we can share and communicate, together. And I hear that as well, in a lot of what you just said. So thank you.
thanks.
So there are
Yeah.
3 questions that I like to ask every guest. First, what inspires you?
I'm going to try to do this without shedding tears because I'm very passionate about what ISP does and how we do it. But I'm really inspired by those around me, in particular, our volunteer network.
Mm.
Imagine ISPE's business model is 100% reliant on the expertise brought to bear by those that have full time day jobs, but yet find it within their purview to spend time, their personal time, addressing issues in the industry that they know will make a difference to patient populations worldwide. And they give their time and their volunteer time, but also my staff, our board of directors, as I mentioned, all of these groups work tirelessly to advance ISP's mission and vision to shape the future of the pharmaceutical industry. and to continue to be a global leader in connecting pharmaceutical knowledge. I think this is key. And, we're also providing a lot of regulatory insights to advance industry efforts to develop and manufacture and reliably deliver quality medicines to patients. But frankly, absent that volunteer network and what they do, and let me tell you, Don, they do it for the patients. They don't do it for ISP, they do it for patients because they care. And I think that's the biggest differentiator in the industry. The people that care about the desired outcome make the biggest difference.
Absolutely. What concerns you?
I'm continuously inspired by this.
Second question, what concerns you?
The biggest concern that I have, and I touched on this earlier, again, this is the year 2024. Drug shortages is a moral issue, in my view, and the industry and regulators has to come together to address drug shortages. I also am concerned about whether or not whether our universities are graduating enough STEM students to actually feed the pipeline of people that need to be in the industry, and what's going to happen when we fall short in that space. So that concerns me. Also, the pandemic that we've just gone through is largely behind us, but we have an industry. Have we, as an industry, become complacent in our ability to respond? And will there be sufficient subject matter expertise and energy to address the next pandemic, whenever it happens? And let's hope it doesn't. But I think we have to be thinking about that.
Yeah, we've had, on the drug shortage side, so we've had David Sanders from Coherus and Tony Paquin were also, on recently, and we talked in depth about drug shortages because they're greatly concerned as well about, just sort of the, why are these levels of drug shortages happening? And then also, looking, more broadly at, sort of the manufacturing and centralizing manufacturing, in areas that also can contribute, because obviously if we have the next pandemic and, we have to supply drugs to individuals here locally in the United States, hopefully we have the capacity, to be able to support that. But, their concerns seem to be aligned with yours that, very much we have to focus on some of these shortages and figure out, what do we need to do to be able to react to them. And then, also on the side of just having the right level of individuals in our industry, we see it all the way through healthcare, right? So from nursing all the way through to drug development now, this concern seems to be, pretty consistent now that, we need individuals that really want to be in the sciences and, really engage as well. And so, a very heartfelt concern as well of mine.
Yeah, that's key.
Last question, and this may overlap what you've already covered, but I want to make sure that I still circle back to give you an opportunity to answer. But what excites you?
Great question. When I see at our conferences or at one of our events a student whose participation was enabled by a donation by one of our members to attend that conference, and I see the glow in their eyes, and I see how engaged they are to learn about our industry and participate at our conferences, it really does excite me. I mean, I go to my staff and I say, see, look, that's because of this program that we have in place. That's because of the donations from our philanthropic donations from our supporters. It really moves me and it excites me. And not a whole lot does excite me, but that does excite me. I can tell you that.
Very good. I really appreciate that as well, because without those foundational moments, I think about some of the things that have happened even in my own life where I've crossed paths, with somebody at an event, that you would never think that one particular thing, really could have an impact. And I've even heard that in terms of the podcast, that students oftentimes will say, look, the way that I learned about life sciences was through your podcast. And I kind of, I chuckle because, I've conducted, nearly 200 interviews now. And out of all of these interviews, to know that they've had additional reach and, might have helped somebody, sort of form initial ideas in terms of where they might want to focus in our industry is a lot of fun for me as well. And so, I can somewhat empathize with what you're saying in terms of, these events and having people attend, that might not be able to financially do it or even geographically do it is absolutely, important.
Yeah.
So
That's
Tom Hartman,
absolutely.
go ahead.
Thank you.
So Tom Hartman, thank you so much for sharing on the Life Science Success Podcast, everything that you're doing with ISPE. I greatly appreciate you being here and for being a guest and telling us both about your career journey as well as the impact that ISPE is having on the industry. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Don. Really appreciate the opportunity. Hope to do this again sometime.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.